So it's almost time for new iPhones. Apple launches new iPhones every year in September and October, and we are a couple of months away from seeing the iPhone 13 upgrade. But we already have an idea about what to expect from the upcoming iPhone 14 lineup. So what we know so far is Apple will launch 4 new models this year, similar to last year and the years before. So as per leaks, we will see iPhone 14 regular, iPhone 14 Pro, iPhone 14 Pro Max and an iPhone 14 Max variant instead of the iPhone 14 mini. Now I've already talked about this iPhone 14 Max variant and you can watch the video somewhere here. But today we are looking at the iPhone 14 Pro models. That includes the iPhone 14 Pro and the Pro Max, which are typically Apple's most expensive smartphones. So in this video, we're looking at everything we know so far. This is Abhik. Let's get started. Let's start with the design. So Apple generally plays it very safe when it comes to iPhone designs. That means that the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Max will look more or less similar to the old gen models. When it comes to the screen, we'll get to see some differences. What we've seen in the renders, iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max will get a new notch instead of the traditional notch that we saw on iPhone 10 and the newer models. So as per these renders, this new notch will have an elongated notch where Apple will house the Face ID sensors, while the hole punch will have the front facing camera. The screen is also set to get 120Hz refresh rate that we see on a lot of Android smartphones, and Apple calls this the ProMotion display. Apple will continue to probably use an OLED panel for a rich viewing experience that we have also seen in iPhone 12 series and iPhone 13 series. But what is changing is that we'll likely get to see a new feature called Always On Display. Now Android users will know this display feature, but iPhone is finally getting this year. Now, but then moving to the back, we'll likely see the same square-shaped camera module where Apple will house 3 rear cameras. And now we'll talk about the camera upgrades. So the rear camera module is set to house 3 camera sensors. What we know so far is Apple is likely going for a 48 megapixel camera this year with 8K video recording support instead of a 12 megapixel camera that we saw on the older iPhones. For the front panel, Apple is set to be working with a new supplier for a better selfie camera. We may also get autofocus capabilities for sharper images, and it may also lead to improvement in low light imaging. Details on the other 2 camera sensors at this point remain unclear, but we'll see more or less similar features. That means we likely see an ultra-wide camera sensor and a telephoto sensor. Video recording capabilities will also be more or less same. That means we likely see the cinematic mode that Apple introduced last year. But sadly, other details at this point remain unknown. So all this is practically meaningless when it comes to the processor. We have been seeing a lot of leaks on the processor, but there still remains a doubt. Some leaks point out that Apple will likely use the A15 Bionic chipset that powers the entire iPhone 13 lineup. But what other leaks suggest that Apple will go for A16 Bionic chipset for its Pro models, while the iPhone regular 14 and iPhone 14 Max will get the A15 Bionic chipset with minor tweaks. Overall, the performance will see a very minimum bump, and that's simply because Apple has been aggressively pushing and working on its processors for the Max. That's why we're not also seeing a very big bump when it comes to Apple Watch in terms of processing power. Similarly, Apple will continue a very minor performance gain for the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max models. So let's now talk about battery. Apple usually doesn't disclose the battery capacity on its iPhone, so naturally we do not have concrete information for the iPhone 14 Pro models. But what we can expect that these new variants will get a bigger battery simply because Apple is planning to launch or planning to roll out newer features like Always On Display. You need to also remember that we will see iOS 16 out of the box with the newer iPhones. That means that these devices need more juice to run for an entire day. But what will remain the same is that Apple will continue to use a lightning port for charging. And if you have been following the news so far, you'll know that the European Union and the American government have been pressurizing Apple to bring Type-C port on its iPhone. But sadly, that doesn't seem to be happening so far. In terms of pricing, iPhone Pro models are already so expensive, so naturally the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Max are going to be expensive. What we've heard so far is that the newer models will be around rupees 8,000 more expensive than the current models. And just to give you an example, the iPhone 13 Pro and the iPhone 13 Pro Max already cost over a lakh in India. Overall, if you ask me what's changing and whether it's worth buying the iPhone 14 Pro and the Pro Max model, if you have the money, I'll simply say that it is going to be an interesting change, as what we have seen that Apple will be introducing a lot of interesting features, but in terms of design, it may not be overwhelming as it is going to be appearing the same as the old gen models. Anyway, let us know in the comment section what do you think of these newer Pro models. Hit that like button if you like this video. Subscribe to Fiber and Fiber Hindi for more amazing videos on iPhone and other Android smartphones. This is Abhay signing off.